All right, good afternoon. We reached 1 o'clock. We're ready to begin.
Sure, we are. Welcome, everybody, to the June 4th Hanford Advisory Board Tanks Committee meeting. My name is Lindsay Summers, and I'm the DDFO for the Hanford site. I just have a few reminders for you today. The first one is this meeting will be conducted in accordance with the Federal Advisory Committee Act. And the second one is each member has a joint responsibility for assuring that the operating ground rules are observed and discussions are conducted in a respectful manner. I appreciate your attendance today, and I look forward to today's briefings. Josh?
Yeah, that's a reminder for me. These meetings are being recorded. There are several people participating online, so be sure to speak towards the owls. We have a sign-in sheet that is near the entrance of the room. This is a separate meeting from this morning, so if you sign in then, please sign in again now. And we do have a new note taker and several new unfamiliar faces. If willing, we can go around the room and do some introductions. I can start. My name is Josh Patnod, part of the facilitation team.
Chandra Flores with the commission team.
Good morning, or afternoon, thank goodness. And I'm Janet Dedeker. I'm the Federal Project Director for the Advanced Modular Pretreatment System.
My name is Rob Davis. I represent the city of Pasco.
Lindsay Summers, DOE.
Dan McDonald with Ecology.
Now, Post Japan from Ecology.
Larry Brandt, Public at Large, non-member of the committee.
Matt Hendrickson, Oregon Department of Energy.
Chris Sutton, Public at Large.
Ryan Miller with Ecology.
Jim Costa, Tridec.
Warner.
Oscorp, Public.
We're all built,
And we have several remote participants, so go down the list, starting with our phone participants. Who do we have with us?
Dan Solitz, member of the public.
Thank you.
It's Rob Parmalee. I'm vice chair right at this point in time anyways.
Thank you. Gabe?
Gabe Bonnie, Nespers Tribe at Public.
Catherine?
Catherine Glick, Nuclear Waste Program Ecology.
Liz?
Liz Matson with Hanford Challenge.
Joan?
Joan Lucas, WRPS Communications.
Matthew?
Matthew Campbell, CTUAR.
Brent?
Brent Peterson, WRPS AMPS Project Manager.
Everyone, thank you, everyone. And Rob, what are we going to be doing today?
Well, welcome everybody. Just to reemphasize, we have a new vice chairman. Raise your hand.
October 1.
He starts October 1. And Rob Parmalee is not in attendance today, so I don't know if he's online.
Yeah.
Hi, Rob. So anyway,
Hello.
just to go through, just like I remind everybody, in last meeting, we had two presentations. One presentation on the low activity waste by Matt, the DF Law project by Matt Irwin. Excellent presentation. And the second presentation was on the holistic negotiations. And we ended up with a real nice summary of the major elements of it. So this particular meeting, we're going to have a briefing on the modular TSCR. They call it the AMP system, modular pretreatment system. And then we're also going to have another, actually the first real discussion on the testbed initiative that we've had. We've been asking for these for some time, and Lindsay has got them, and that's really good. The other thing at the end of this meeting, I'd like everybody to start thinking too, is what do you think that we need to talk about next? And in a lot of cases, we'll put it on a calendar and try to work it into next year's schedule for discussion. So if anybody has any good ideas or what they want, I can run down a list a little bit later of stuff that we've put up before. And Lindsay will take that information and do her best to try to get us a discussion. So the very first discussion, I guess we'll just jump right into Janet's, talk. Janet, how long you been with the DOE now?
I became a GSSC in 2000 and I became a Fed in 2006. So I came in as a project controls officer. And then in 2010, I became a deputy FPD. And then I became the FPD for tank site season removal and now for advanced modular pretreatment system.
Okay, good deal. And you're gonna fill us all in on it.
I am.
Okay,
Yeah, so it's kind of a short presentation. It appeared that we had like 15 minutes or so.
and you can talk more than that if you want.
Okay. So the first slide, the next slide, please. So what is being briefed today is the advanced modular pretreatment system. And we achieved what's called critical decision 1. That was approved in April 25th of 2024. And that was actually approved by the Deputy Secretary of Energy, who is David Turk. And once we have that presentation, so we have what's called 2 committees. You have the Project Management Risk Committee, and then you have the Energy System Acquisition Advisory Board. So 2 separate, but they really collaborated together. Typically, they are 1 hour. The Project Management Risk Committee, I was done in 30 minutes, so that was a thumbs up. You know, there were no concerns. And then for their Energy Acquisition Advisory Board, that is led by the EM organization, and it was the same thing. And like I mentioned, David Turk was there. And in my presentation, I recommended that he delegate the future critical decision documents such as CD23, CD4A, CD4, and to EM1, which he did. So that will kind of shorten the cycle, if you will, as we move forward. We did do an evaluation and we ended up selecting 2 process modules of 4 columns. And that is also with the extension of TSCR operations. And we chose at this time to defer the installation of a 3rd AMPS module. So in the event that we are starting to process the low activity waste to the waste treatment plant, if we feel that we need a 3rd module, we certainly can get it in there in a timely manner. One of the sensitivities that I have, I worked in reactor and various other places is, I've seen throughout my career, sometimes we buy things and then we don't use them. And that's a waste of taxpayers' money and people's time. So I really think that we made the right decision. Of course, that decision was vetted all the way from Delmar Noyes, who is the assistant manager for tank waste operations, all the way up to Brian Mans. And again, the same recommendation to DOE headquarters as well. What do we want to do today with the information I'm going to provide? I'm providing you information only. I'm not acting and asking for advice. That's kind of out of my wheelhouse. So I'm just here to kind of present where we are. So the next slide, please. The selected alternatives. So similar to tank site season removal demonstration, AMPS is using the same AP tank farm, B tanks, the process operations, the CST media, the ion exchange columns, the size are still the same size, and it is a modular approach. It is not a permanent facility. One of the things that we're really focused on is to continue to implement the TSCR lessons learned and the required changes, including the increased footprint, the hard pipe and pipe transfer lines. We're moving now into a 24/7 operation, and again, mentioned the 4 column process modules, and we have a weather protected egress. One of the things that when I mentioned Steve Falk, who was the PD and I was the deputy, one of the lessons learned that we came out of there is I didn't feel that we did an adequate enough job getting our construction folks, involved, Redcon, some of these disciplines that are very crucial to the success. And so we have made it a point to continually work with, all of the disciplines, making sure that we're listening and that, we seek their guidance and make sure that, they're the ones that ultimately run this project, not people like myself or Steve Bosch or whatever. So that's been very, very beneficial. We go out in the farms routinely. I have an integrated project team meeting with the contractor WRPS. So it's getting all those disciplines in there together, not only from WRPS, but from DOE. That way we can see the exchange and the communication and ensuring that we're going down the path forward the right way. So the next slide, please. So this is the site plan concept, and I gotta get my glasses on. I'm just gonna point out some key things. So if you're looking to the far right, down here, this is the footprint of Tisker right there. And you can see that we're still using our double shell tanks. We have, to the far left, that is our AMPS control room. That's an existing control room that we will use for the 24/7 operations. And then in the middle, it's called the processing enclosures. Processing enclosures are really the whole heart of AMPS. So that's what makes everything run. And so we really are focused on the center of this site plan. Again, our AMPS is a much more robust project than the tank side cesium removal. Next slide, please. So some of the capabilities and the design advancements. So to point out some of the things that are the same as what we did in Tisker is the AP farm feed, the product waste, our interfaces with WTP, the ICD 3031, our process operations. We're using the same CST medium and the column sizes. And again, as I mentioned, it is a modular facility. It is not a permanent facility. Again, some of the changes that we have in lessons learned that we've implemented here for AMPS is a larger footprint. We have more room and we have multiple process units. We've got a weather protected egress supporting donning and doffing of personnel and of the protective equipment when they're coming out. And then, as I mentioned, we have 4 ion exchange columns and a 3 ion exchange train. And with AMPS, we're using pipe and pipe transfer lines, whereas in the tank side cesium removal, that was hose and hose transfer lines. And as I mentioned, we're going in the 24/7 operations. Kind of the pictures to your right. The first one is that's the inside the tank side cesium removal system. When we were out there getting things ready, it just was far too tight for something that it was going to be bigger. So that is what we've improved on. Our bay doors to the upper right, those are shown on exchange columns. And so we will have, like I said, we're having more columns. And then down below, that's the control room. And it was tight. You could go one supervisor in there and one guy. And so you had to switch them out. So that's why we've moved to on the previous page, the whole big AMPS control room. So the staff, the workers, they'll have the lunchrooms, they'll have the ability to move around, watch things a little tighter, and hopefully not be so crowded. So the selection criteria for AMPS was we had to make sure that the WTP low activity facility melter needs are met. One is the production requirement to feed 2 melters in the low activity waste facility. Second is the design capacity to produce a total of 30 metric tons of glass per day. by the two melters that are operating in parallel. The maximum glass composition range for sodium oxide of 21.8%. And then meeting the acceptance criteria for treated law melter, feed identified in ICD 30 interface control document for direct feed low activity waste. Next, so, and in conclusion, some of the takeaways is we continue to work very closely, obviously, with WTP. We moved to a different building, 2420. We're sitting right next to each other. Whereas it was a little bit, when we were at 2440, we didn't have everybody there. So that's a good move. As I mentioned, critical decision one was approved by the Project Management Grids Committee and the Energy System Acquisition. And what happens there is when we got the approval for critical decision one, that allows us the endorsement of starting the preliminary design. I'd also like to thank you, both the Department of Ecology and the Hanford Advisory Board for being so supportive of the tank site cesium removal. That was huge for us. And I think you might know, we got shut down due to COVID for almost 2 years. They let us back in. We had not started construction. And so we had folks out there. We were out there sometimes 6, 7, days a week. And what ultimately happened, and again, thanks to from permits to everything, we brought that tank site cesium removal system in under budget and ahead of schedule. And so it was a collaboration of many of the workers, of the HAB and ecology, and just working together to make this so successful. And I'm looking forward to that as we move forward with the advanced modular pretreatment system.
Thank you. Any questions from the audience at this point? Oh, no, wait a minute.
Yeah.
State.
Dan and Alco here today. Dan, did you have anything? Thank you, John. I appreciate it. As those of you who are aware of the settlement agreement may know, there's a milestone in the settlement agreement on this subject. The milestone number is N622405, I believe. And it speaks to the idea of submitting permit application for design and construction of the facility set by August 31 of 2026. Not very far off. I've already been in contact with both Janet and with Richard. And what we'll need to do through both the project management meetings set up and through other meetings, permitting and otherwise, we'll need to set up a protocol by which we have interim, if you will, informal milestones, progress, however you want to say it, between now and that date of 8/31/26, to ensure that everything is done along the way, to see to it that when we get there, the complete package for design and permitting and those kinds of things can be handed over to permit coordination, and we can get through one time. So we'll do what we can along the way informally with Ryan's help, Nalco's help, and others to ensure that as we go through this process, we're not missing anything. It is a good thing, I believe, that we're not, if you will, reinventing the wheel. This is Tister-like, Tister on steroids, if you will. So we're on familiar territory for a lot of the things that we're going to do. The one thing I would ask Janet, if you have the information at this point, if not, we can get it, is how often the AP tanks will be filled with waste. And the reason I bring that up, when the Tister waste had to be reprocessed, it was about 880 some odd thousand gallons. I don't know the number of hours it's going for that to occur, but that was essentially half or so of the capacity that I believe the AMS is designed to proceed with. If in fact that's the case, we're going to be filling AP tanks pretty quickly. So it's just one of the things that we all need to be aware of. And this is now a critical part of the process flow to keep things moving and to see to it that we don't idle a low activity waste melter.
I think we're ready to open for questions now. We'd like to start.
Yes. Questions? Anybody from?
Okay, we have a question online with Dan Schultz. Dan?
Yes, thank you. And looking forward to that big machine coming online. Are you going to keep the Tisker around for a while just for backup, or is it going to stay backup, or what's the fate of the old Tisker?
So we are still going to be having, tank site cesium removal up until, we are ready to start the advanced module. At some point, we will be, bringing Tisker down, but that will be probably not until at least the 2028 timeframe. Right now, that is a target date. And so, but no, we're not throwing it away at this point in time, but maybe by the time we get in the 2028 timeframe.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, go
Oh,
ahead.
no, please, Rob.
Yeah, I just say, just as a point of clarification here, the ICD 30 and 31,
Yes.
okay, those are in the contract with Bechtel for supplying waste to the low activity waste melter. What's important here is that if you go through the ICD 30 and 31, they actually specify the isotopes, they specify the waste loading, they specify everything that's gonna go into that waste log that they're gonna make out of glass. So it's an important document, so it's a very controlled. The second question I had is, do you have an idea of what the design codes are going to be used?
Not at this.
ASME,
I don't
B31.3?
know those, but I can find out.
Okay, the reason why is that, we noticed that in the Tisker, that we had numerous leaks.
Yeah,
And that's largely because it was all mechanical joints.
right.
And that if we were designing it to B31.3 or B31.1 or one of the other ASME codes, there would have been welded connections.
And that's what we're finding.
Right. And that really makes a difference.
Correct.
Right. Okay, go ahead, Matt.
I got a couple. You're increasing the capacity to flow through. I noticed that you have your ventilation skid stuffed up next to that ancillary enclosure area. Are you expecting changes in air permitting at all?
From my perspective, we're not there yet.
Okay.
Because of critical decision one. I mean, the next move is starting the preliminary design effort. And what I've done in the past for tank site cesium removal is what we do is we get a big conference room together and, I have the Defense Nuclear Safety Board, ecology attends, PAM would be invited, and then of course WRPS, some of the WTP, nuclear safety. So most disciplines would be in that room. In the past, what it took was about three days. That might be a lot to chew off at the beginning, but that is the intent, is we will have an official preliminary design kickoff, which is what I did for tank site cesium removal.
Another thing that I would like you to discuss, if it's possible, especially for my constituency, could you go a little more in depth of the difference between hose and hose and pipe and pipe? I understand that the new amps is pipe and pipe, but the old Tisker's hose and hose. What is the difference?
Well, pipe and pipe will last longer. And when we worked collaboratively with ecology, the hose and hose transfer lines are much more temporary in nature. And so I think for the first time, we were only anticipating that those hose and hose transfer lines would last about 5 years. Well, they've lasted longer than that. And at this point, I think there has been some discussions with ecology on the extension of the hose and hose transfer lines until we have amps back up and up and running. Pipe and pipe is permanent.
Which brings me to another clarifier. I mean, we have the term modular in here, which means you move pieces around. And, and you say, it's not fixed. This isn't meant to be here. But then you have the pipe and pipe, which is fixed. It's right there in AP form, which you're not going to move AP form because you're definitely not moving DF law.
Correct.
Well, what of this exactly is modular versus what is staying?
Well, I think a part of it is the history So years ago, we started with a permanent facility, which was the low activity waste pretreatment system. And we got going, I can't remember what year it was, but I want to say in about, I think I wrote the mission need statement in 2014. Yeah, because it was President's Weekend. We got CD0, which is, they determined that we had a mission gap in need. So we started off, and this was a large facility, a very big facility. And what happened was we couldn't meet, because it was so big, we could not meet the need date at that time for WTP. And so we backed off. We had 2 expert panels come in and review with the recommendation that it was no longer viable to continue with this huge permanent facility. And that's why we shifted over to the tank side season removal, which was subproject 1 and now AMPS.
Thank you very much.
So I had the same question, I think I'd like to ask about, that none of this is going to be removed and sent to Paducah at some point in time. Now, it's fixed. Would there be a difference in cost if it was built such that it was permanent rather than?
Oh, there would be a significant increase in cost.
There would be?
Yes, which is what got us down when we were going after the big blocks.
Okay,
Yeah, this is going to be, nothing's cheap, but it's definitely going to be, it's definitely going to be much better than a permanent facility.
thank you.
You're welcome.
So, another question, because we have a lot of variable waste chemistries. It is, and we learned that in the TSCR operation, it was suitable for certain wastes. So does the modular unit expand the ability to get more than the type, so the different tanks have different chemistries in them, bismuth, some of them mixed, some not mixed, et cetera. But the TSCR can only work on certain waste right now. The question is this permanent one gonna expand the ability of the tank side cleanup of liquids? Is it gonna be suitable for all tanks?
I don't know that I have an answer to say that it's suitable for all tanks.
How about most tanks? No, my only point was, are we considering that in the development of the amps?
Well, definitely we have, instead of the 2 ion exchange columns, now we have 4.
Four.
So our capacity is definitely going to be much more than what we had for
Right.
this year.
Okay. And then we're gonna store them on the same pad?
Yes, we're not going to go buy we're not gonna build a pad right now. We have at least 6 years of putting the IFCs, the spent IFCs out there. And we will evaluate whether or not, it depends, on how fast we're producing this stuff. And then we already have the place, it's right next to where the TSCR pad is, that's where we would go in there. Which is another reason we use the ion exchange columns, because if we were gonna go with something bigger, that, the TSCR pad is only like about a foot. And so if we were gonna do a bigger ion exchange column, now you are looking at something like 3 feet. So that was going to really increase the cost. And so that's why we're not gonna mess with the ion exchange columns. They worked.
Right. Okay, what other questions?
Reminder for those online, you can let us know by raising your hand or entering something in the chat if you have a question. Chris.
How often do you anticipate having to change out each individual ion exchange column?
I don't know that yet.
How often are you changing them out? Well, I guess you haven't changed them out yet in TSCR.
Yeah,
We've changed them out, but back to May, it took over tank side season removal, so I have not been involved with TSCR since we went operational in 2022.
Okay.
I can get that information for you. I can try to get that information.
If you would, please.
Sure.
Are you still gonna run on campaign? You know, where you would have a campaign and then set up for it and run it till it's dry, and then the next campaign?
We're not into preliminary design, so I think that's a viable option, but what we have to do is make sure that we're going forward with the preliminary design, because it is a different, it is bigger. And so I don't have the answer to that.
And then, where does this interface with the evaporator?
It doesn't really interface with the evaporator. I mean, we're close to where the evaporator is, but there's no connectivity between AMPS and the evaporator.
Right. But the DFY is expected to take evaporator feed.
I am not DFY,
Okay.
sorry.
Okay. All right, yeah.
This is Richard by DOE sheet. The evaporator is used to manage water content in the tank, so we'll have to manage space within the tank to allow for DFL. Like we said, we'll have AP tank farm filling up. There'll be other on-site activities going on. We need to manage the tank space. So the evaporator will have its mission to support that, primarily retrievals as they add water to retrieve waste. We need to be able to take the water out so that there's enough sufficient space, but then AMPS's mission is the pre-treatment capability for
Right.
WTP.
So then would there be a time that the TSCR prepared waste would work its way through the evaporator to reduce volume?
No, that would happen prior to, and this might be a refresher on the TSCR, but they have the AP tank farm that they use to stage the waste, qualify the waste, feed the TSCR unit, run it through TSCR, and then you have the pre-treated waste in a separate tank, and then you have returns for off normal conditions. So they go between about 4 tanks in AP tank farm. And we do the qualification process ahead of sending it to AP farm for qualification. So if it needed to be evaporated, would have been identified before it was transferred over to AP1.
Okay, so there's no interaction. Okay, so the value of the evaporator in the LAW is probably not very significant.
It'll help us manage space, allow for retrievals. It will reduce the volume that will ultimately have to go through vitrification if we can remove the water from it prior to the pre-treatment step.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
Bob.
It's called modular, so it's not permanent. My experience in the past decade was in that with, and they had a temporary interim ventilation system, which because it was not permanent, they were given variances to a lot of code. For example, their power cables were laid out on the ground rather than in a properly designed system. I'm sure there are probably mechanical differences too, if it's temporary, not permanent. And given the mission of the law facility going out to 2080, I mean, that's a long time for a temporary facility. So why do you really buy it other than potentially cutting some costs by building a modular system rather than permanent system? And then the risk associated with temporary systems.
Well, I don't have my DOE badge on, so I can say what, but, I mean, right now the design life for AMPS is 20 years. Okay, 20 years. That's the design life. I guess from my perspective as, I'll just say it as a taxpayer and not as an employee, is I hope we have the opportunity to, in the future, to reduce some costs with the potential of grouting. So I don't know, I don't believe that the top, in my opinion, why would we build a permanent facility when we're looking at opportunities to maybe do something with the waste sooner than later? And I don't see how we could still be doing this in the 2080. The good news is I'll be dead, so I don't have to worry about that. But, you know, that's just kind of my perspective.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Great brief.
I think Pam had a question.
Oh, Pam's got questions.
No?
It's a point for.
It's for the next topic.
Oh, okay.
Do we have any other questions though? Anyone online? Does not hear us out.
All right, thank you, Janet.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it very much.
Yeah, thank you, Janet. Thanks.
And thank you, Lynn.
So we are well ahead of the agenda. We have our next presenter here, so it's a question for our chair and our presenter. Would you prefer to take a break or jump ahead to the next topic?
Are you ready?
I have a quick note. I saw on the agenda that Michelle Mullins was supposed to provide regulatory perspective for EPA. I don't see her on the call yet. I just wanted to, put that out there.
Take a quick break.
You want to take 5 minutes?
Well, the presentation, I just noticed the presentation wasn't supposed to start till 2:30, so I'm not sure if Michelle was still planning to hop on or not. I just wanted to be mindful of that because she was specifically listed on the agenda.
Does anyone have contact information for her? Wait, by here.
It's really more about amps.
Let's see, what can I come up?
I see Nick Vidargus is on the call. Nick, do you know if Michelle could hop on earlier by any chance?
I believe Michelle is supposed to hop on. I will check in with her and see.
Can she jump on early, like in 5 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes?
I thought she would be on now, so let me just double check and I'll report back.
Perfect. So Josh, do you want to take a 5 or 10 minute break and then come back?
10-minute break. I think we'll check back in at 1:45.
Sounds good. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Josh is getting ready to start.
Yeah, so, I'd like to, introduce, Richard, who is, been working on the test bed initiative for a while. There's been a lot of talk about the test bed initiative. A lot of us have been contacted by people, with interest in test bed initiatives. I turn it over to Richard.
Thank you. Appreciate it for having me. So the slides are up and we'll just go through them. And I think questions will also be useful. So, but if you have anything in the meantime, I'm not averse to just stopping me and asking your question right then and there. So my name is Richard Valle. I'm a program manager within the Tank Farms organization at DOE, Hanford. And today we'll be discussing in particular the 2,000 gallon test bed initiative or TBI demonstration. So we are on slide 2. And before getting into the heavy details, our comms would be remiss if we didn't frame it for you. So TBI is important and we'll get to there, but how does it fit in? Well, first bullet is the key where treating radioactive and chemical waste is a high priority for the department. Like we talked about in the prior presentation, we're well on our way towards a glass treatment via the direct feedable activity waste program. TSCR is currently providing that pretreatment capability. AMPS will provide the long-term pretreatment capability for that 20-year design life. And so that's great news on our way towards vitrifying tank waste, stabilizing it in glass form. But then the purpose of today's discussion is a parallel path towards potential treatment for some of DOE Hanford's tank waste. And so we've been working with Department of Ecology. I see someone there. Thank you for the support thus far to consider some of these additional options for the safe retrieval, treatment, and disposal of tank waste. So then on to slide 3. Where will the demonstration be taking place? There's double shell tanks within DOE Hanford. In particular, there's tank SY101. You can see a schematic of it provided in the side of the slide there for you. But it is a double shell tank farm in the 200 West area of DOE. So a lot of the last presentation dealt with WTP and tank farms input with amps. That's on the 200 East area. So this is about 5 to 7 miles to the west in the 200 West area. We've selected a tank where we will perform this demonstration. And primarily it was selected because it does not impact any of those DF law activities. So it could progress without any impact. Not that there are any, but even if there were, it would progress unimpacted and unimpeded from DF law activities. So just highlighting a few things on the schematic there. The tank farm or the tank SY101 double shell tank, it has different waste fractions within it. So you can see a solids level, and these are just nominal depths of where the layers are. So a solids level, and then more importantly, a stratified liquid layer. So a more dense one that sits below, the less dense one that sits above. And so that's important because we, in our evaluation, have found that offers inherent pretreatment capability, right? Because we have settling that's occurred. So the next slide kind of points to that. As part of DOE's radioactive waste management, we've done a waste incidental reprocessing evaluation to show what we would need to do to be able to manage this waste as a low level waste. So we stepped through an evaluation. One of the criteria for the determination is to be able to remove key radionuclides to the maximum extent practicable. And our evaluation has shown that about 98.8% of the key radioactivity would be removed. Again, this is a paper evaluation, but would be removed in the physical iteration of the demonstration if it were performed as described in our evaluation. And in the highlight for you, you can see the main constituent radioisotope that's removed is iodine-129. It accounts for the vast majority of that 98.8% radioactive removal. And that's provided, I think we'll get to it in a little while, but it's provided through ion exchange. That's similar to what's being employed in AMPS and TSCR. So that's on the radioactive waste management side. If we go to the next slide, this kind of describes the demonstration in a nutshell. So we propose the on-site pre-treatment of 2,000 gallons of tank waste, again from double shell tank SY101. We would install an in-tank pre-treatment capability to remove that 98.8% of radioactivity. Then we transition from the on-site activities to the off-site. We would perform laboratory analysis to ensure that we could send it off-site to stabilize in the grout waste form. And we've selected Energy Solutions in Clyde, Utah, and Waste Control Specialists in Andrews County, Texas, as that treatment vendor. And then each of those treatment vendors would also have their own on-site disposal in their respective facilities. So they would be performing the off-site disposal following the successful off-site treatment. So the next slide, for those that like the visual, this kind of just puts it in that visual context. So again, we have the pre-treatment column in the far left. We currently have called out 0. So we have SY101. It currently exists today with those waste fractions that we explained. Step 1 is we would install that in-tank pre-treatment system, perform the pre-treatment process to remove those key radionuclides, and then the pre-treated waste would exit the tank and be collected in those 6 containers. The 6 containers would then have a grab sample pulled from each and then analyzed at our 222S laboratory. That would culminate in an analytical final report that we would then use for those 5A and 5Bs, where we start transitioning from on-site to the off-site aspects of the demonstration. So have the final report, perform all the necessary paperwork to send the waste off-site, and then the next 2 columns are just mirror images. We've selected again those 2 vendors, transport them to their facility. They would perform the stabilization solidification to treat the waste in a grout waste form, and then they would also respectively dispose of the waste at their own site. splitting of the shipment in about half. So three of those totes for Clive, Utah, and 3 of the totes or containers for Andrews County, Texas. And the next slide beat me to it. This, if you ever want to refer to it, this just kind of steps through that process. Again, 1 for 1 with those callouts in each respective column. And so this one we've already went through. So next slide. I think this one, if we click it, when we click it, some stuff will start appearing. So we currently have waste existing in SY 101. We'll be installing that in-tank pretreatment system. The waste will, the system will sit within about 6 inches of that top layer of liquid tank waste. It'll draw it through the in-tank pretreatment system that has a filter, and then the ion exchange column that provides the radioactive removal. And then, like we talked about, it exits the tank in compliant transfer lines to a delay tote. We'll be able to perform direct measurement readings to ensure the performance of the system, the radioactive removal of the system is adequate. And then upon successful confirmation there, further route the waste to those 2,000 or those 6 totes or waste containers that total to about 2,000 gallons. Next slide, please. So why are we doing this? We talked about at the beginning when we were framing kind of the context of it. We've received a lot of input from external entities. Government Accountability Office, GAO, the National Academies of Science have performed an external report. Federally funded Research and Development Center was also developed the report, and then NAS, the National Academy of Sciences, provided a review of it. Then other external stakeholders like the Energy Communities Alliance. So all of them pointing towards having DOE at least demonstrate or look into additional treatment capabilities for Hanford tank waste. And so this demonstration would provide useful information as we continue to negotiate. I think we mentioned it at this point that there's a settlement agreement that's out for public comment. So different aspects of this demonstration would help inform those milestones and then lead to potential decision-making for DOE in coordination with ecology and our regulators late in the future. I think that might be the last one. So
we'll have perspectives from both ecology and EPA. Who do we have from ecology?
We have me. I'll share a couple slides and then we'll have see if I missed anything and outcome. And I just had a couple quick slides. Just because it's timely, we had the RD&D permit comment here recently, so I thought I'd provide the Clip Notes version of what the permit is for awareness. You can go ahead and do the next slide. So again, the permit for the 2,000 gallon demonstration for the on-site activities, it's a research, development, and demonstration permit. And as the slide shares, our agency can issue these kind of permits to a facility that proposes to utilize an innovative and experimental dangerous waste treatment technology or process. I've got the receipts, I got the wax if you want them, but I won't read through them because that's just a whole bunch of numbers. They include requirements to protect human health and the environment and typically allow operation for up to a year after issuance. Go ahead, next slide. So the scope for this RD&D permit, that's for the draft RD&D permit, would authorize the proposed 2,000 gallon test bed initiative demonstration to test the feasibility and efficacy of deploying the aforementioned in-tank pretreatment system that Richard talked about to separate and pre-treat about 2,000 gallons of low activity tank waste. That pre-treated waste would then be shipped offsite for gravity and disposal at Resource Conservation and Recovery Act permitted facilities outside Washington. And again, specifically the permit would authorize the on-site waste management activities in Hanford's 200 West area before the pre-treated waste is again shipped out of state. Anticipate the permit will be effective for a year, limits the pretreatment, up to the 2,000 gallons. And just a clarifying remark that this draft RD&D permit is not part of the Hanford site-wide permit. You can go to that slide. So an update on the draft permit, we held a public comment period from March 11th to April 25th. We held a hybrid public meeting on March 20th in Richland with some presentations by Richard and our staff. after the comment period ended, we received a total of 68 comment submittals. So we're still working through the public comments, responding to comments, and working on the response to comments, and then we'll be issuing the final permit here soon. And Michelle could talk about this, but we just wanted to mention that, another requirement for the 2,000 gallon TBI demonstration was a treatability variance, and that was issued by the EPA on May 1st. But I'm sure Michelle can talk more beyond that. And then lastly, we shared before, we support the proposed 2,000 gallon TBI demonstration, and as the slide shares, we think it can really be the demonstration of a valid path to final appropriate disposal of grouted, low activity tank waste at facilities that have protected geologic features that also don't have the groundwater contamination concerns that we had here at the Hanford site. We also think it can really support the critical needs for the tank waste mission, including mitigation of double shell tank space limitations in the SY tank farm, and accelerate timelines for retrieval of low activity tanks waste from tanks in the 200 West area, as we kind of talked about at the recent HAB meeting with the hosting agreement side of things. But Dan and Nalco, I'll just defer you guys. Is there anything I missed from the ecology perspective that you guys want to share?
Just one reiteration, this is not a production project. This is a demonstration only. It is small in scope, it is small in duration, and it's designed to find out whether or not what Ryan and others have talked about could in fact be something that we might consider for production scale. But at this particular point, it's 2,000 gallons, 2 potential waste receipt facilities, and that's it.
Yeah, and the latest permitting update is that currently ecologies are making June 18 for making a final permit decision. And we addressed all the comments.
And my only last comment was I saw that DOE handed out their TBI fact sheet. We have our own little one pager we've made for the comment period. I'll drop the link into the chat, but just noticed that. So, but yeah, thanks. And I'll defer over to EPA side of things.
And then for EPA, we have Michelle Mullins joining us online. Michelle.
Hi. I apologize that I'm not actually online. I'm just on the phone. I lost internet service last night, so I also don't really have access to some of the materials I might otherwise reference. So this might be a little less precise than my colleagues from DOE and ecology, but I can just speak to the treatability variance part of this effort, which was led and finalized by EPA. It was a small component of this testbed demonstration, but a critical component because it sort of found that path forward. Well, all the parties came together and found that path forward through issuing a treatability variance, so that we didn't have to define whether or not the HLVIT land disposal regulations applied, and that allows for this offsite treatment and final disposal. And because it's going offsite and out of state, that's really why EPA had to be involved, because of the cross state border issues. I think ecology mentioned that it was finalized May 1st. We did have a public comment period prior to that. I think we had about 13 comments. Most of them were positive. There were some concerns about transporting liquid waste, which was really outside the scope of our treatability variance. And that's essentially how we address that in our response to comments in the final publication. So also similar to the RD&D permit, the scope of the treatability variance is limited to just this 2,000 gallons. It does not incorporate any other tank waste into any kind of variance from the land disposal restrictions. So I think that's all I have to say at this moment. I don't know if Nick might have something he wants to add for EPA, but that's all I have to say.
No, I don't have anything to add. I think that about covered the treatability variance. But happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Does the committee have any questions on anything they've heard? Oh,
Yeah. First of all, the question would be, the waste that you're pulling out of the tank, would it meet the ICD 3031 requirements?
I haven't done that exercise, so can't answer for sure. But what I can say is it does use the same pre-treatment technology as TSCR with the same CST, ion exchange column resin. It'd just be a matter of crunching the numbers. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, but I think the whole reason why I asked the question is that this is, that composition of waste could also be sent directly to the melter, could it not? And that's the ICD 30.
Right. If it did, that would be one aspect of it. But the purpose of this demonstration is to, especially because of, like we mentioned, treatability variance and things like that, this waste really presents itself as very opportune towards performing the demonstration with offsite treatment and disposal. So to get into too specifics, but the organic concentrations are such so that we know that this is a good waste volume to be able to perform the demonstration for offsite treatment. So we would really want to ensure that we perform the demonstration with that stabilization treatment.
Okay. And organics really mess with the grout, right? That's why we want to minimize that.
I don't know how much in the weeds we want to get, but so there are different LDR constituents that have been identified for a treatment technology that's backed up by data that suggests that treatment technology is sufficient for those constituents. So for things like metals, the grout treatment is identified for organics, not necessarily, but for the concentration of organics that we envision in this demonstration, they're low enough to where grout treatment will be technically viable.
Right. The couple things I just want to point out to our committee is that this whole effort at TBI is really down what we consider our values for the board. One is developing new technology was one of our values. Another one is involving the public. Another one is minimizing or offsite disposal. Those are all values that we have in the board, and so along with other values, but we have those, and having this process go forward is real important to that. And at this point here, I guess we got any other questions? Because I was just going to sum up the idea that, okay, please.
Mia and Pam. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm curious about the timeline for this. So let's say that June 18th comes around, Ecology issues the demonstration permit. What's the timeline of all of the steps that need to happen up till the point where it gets to Andrews, Texas, Utah?
Sure. So the permit issuance and ecology, I'm sorry, if there's anything to say there, feel free, but the permit issuance would be June 18th. Cross my fingers and thank you for working to that date. But then that's issuance. We add 30 days so that we have a permit effective. So we're in July 18th for an effective permit. That really allows us to perform the tank installation activities. And so our contractor will perform the installation, do acceptance testing on the physical installation. There'll be an independent review to ensure that the installation was performed accordingly. So all that takes time. So we're more into the fall timeframe.
Just to let me clarify, so when you add the 30 days, can you start the activities within those 30 days, or are you waiting?
Wait,
Okay,
maybe ecology would say you could perform at risk, but DOE would wait 30 days. So we're in the fall time frame to where we have an installed system, verified that it's installed correctly, able to perform the pretreatment activities. Those don't take very long. If you look at our permit, I think we say it takes about 9 to 11 days to perform the pretreatment, remove, pump out those 2,000 gallons, perform the pretreatment. Then we have to do the grab sampling and send the grab sample material to the laboratory. That's what really takes a lot of time. So the laboratory has asked that they're provided 120 days to perform the full suite of analyses, radiochemistry, organic analysis. So we're into the early 25, and then we would be able to perform the paperwork and send it off site. So we're more into the spring of 2025 timeframe for waste being sent off site.
And you have to contract with Waste Energy or with McAndrews, Texas and Clive
We have subcontracts in place
already now,
right now.
even without the paperwork of the analytical.
Right.
Okay.
So if that analytical paperwork doesn't turn out correctly, then we can't send it, but at least we have a subcontract in place now. We can ask them questions on their treatment capabilities. So it's good to have them under contract so we can have direct conversations with them. If they demonstrate not to be able to perform, then we don't execute the full contract terms, subcontractor.
Is there anything in this project in which DOE will have the contractor test the final stabilized waste form?
Right.
And send the results of those testing back so that you know that it's glass-like, for lack of a better word?
The treatability variance says that we are, through our subcontractor, will perform testing before it's land disposed. So perform testing after the solidification treatment, so after grouting, to ensure that it can be land disposed. So yes, we will perform through our vendor.
And that's a requirement, just to make that clear, that's a requirement of the treatability variance that EPA issued.
And we have a queue of one. Pam.
At the last TAB meeting, that we had, over at the convention center, I raised some questions, potential concerns about shipping of liquid. And a lot of people responded to me from interesting places, including the communication manager for waste control specialist, who happens to be an old friend of mine. And he talked me through, the position of their firm and the analysis that they've done. And he said that they are so confident in the separation equipment that they believe that there's a possibility the waste being sent to them could go in their commercial landfill. It wouldn't even have to go into the federal landfill, which would save the Department of Energy. So I was pretty interested, and I said, you shared that with the Department of Energy. And they said they met with Ike and Jeff, who I believe is EM3. But as of that date, which is a couple weeks ago now, I think, they had not met with Brian or his staff. So that's relatively new news. But good news,
Which commercial entity was this?
waste control specialist.
Yeah.
do you know when the grout to waste ratios will be shared with the public, and also the testing that the subcontractor does before land disposal, will that be also shared with the public? The results of that testing?
So the grout to waste ratio These vendors have a proprietary method for treating the waste. We send them the waste profile, they tell us if they can treat it, but then it's usually through a proprietary formulation, grout formulation. So I'm not sure we will actually be able to share the specifics. We'll see how much we can share. But what I can say is we did perform a 3-gallon TBI demonstration. Again, the purpose of today's was to focus on the next iteration, the 2000, but there's probably data in the 3,000 and the 3-gallon one that we can share from a completed demonstration. And then your second question was on
The testing that the subcontractor would do.
yeah, actually I'm not sure. I'm gonna see if Michelle, do you know if that data was supposed to be submitted to EPA for the post-treatment testing?
It is supposed to be submitted to EPA.
Okay, is
I
that
don't know
then
that we had
shared?
any, like, I don't think we had made any plans per se to like post it on a web page, but, you know, I imagine it would be publicly available information for us. I mean, I imagine it would be considered releasable information.
We would hope that it be released.
Yeah, I guess only thing on that, thank you, Michelle, is we do have on Hanford.gov a website dedicated. And everything we're able to release is on there. And we would probably continue that. And if EPA is going to share it, we already have a website dedicated to that. I would say DOE would also consider doing that as well.
Did you have a question?
I have a couple, if you don't mind. I appreciate you providing the graph of the various radionuclides and content. It looks to me, correct me if I'm wrong here, that the only thing being removed is cesium. And I'd love to be disabused of my notion by anyone in the committee. I thought that there was a little bit of strontium that came out of this, and then you got column 1 versus column 2 materials in the periodic table. I didn't know that CST was that specific to just cesium. And 2, I note a bit of ingrowth in your cobalt 60. Is that solely from activation products from your neutrons down there, or is that from a different source?
I would have to pull the string on the cobalt, but you are right that the CST resin has an affinity towards iodine, cesium, and then the iodine 129 is what's being removed.
I think
yeah, this should be the gold box should be on the cesium. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's you can see the order of magnitude there, 1.5. So it has a strong affinity to the cesium 137, but that doesn't mean that it won't also have an affinity towards others. But I'd have to go pull the string on the cobalt 60.
Probably won't do much to cobalt because it's a transition metal.
Yeah.
But why it increase this, I don't know the mechanics.
We're far down.
Right, we are.
We're far down in the lead. Can we bring it back up?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I noted that I was wondering if you had the gold box there because iodine 129 becomes one of your key risk drivers or not, when you take out all that cesium.
That was an error. Sorry.
Yeah, a couple things I would like to comment is I do appreciate, the transport fact sheet that you did. I also like hearing that you have subcontracts in place with both, Clive and Andrews. And I also noted that the transportation goes north into Idaho and then down for this particular set of materials.
We have, so as part of the process, right, we have a plan in place towards getting towards offsite shipment. So we don't have an identified shipment vendor selected yet. We know that as part of the process that will happen naturally. But once we have an identified and awarded transportation vendor, we will work with them to identify the transportation route. So for planning purposes right now, we know that we would avoid Oregon we would circumvent Oregon.
Classic.
And then, we would solidify that with the transportation vendor when they're on board by making that a requirement.
To get to McAndrews, Texas, are you gonna have to avoid Colorado by any chance? Because they can be pretty touchy too.
We have now identified avoiding Colorado. We have maybe a good tie here would be we have a environmental assessment under NEPA that's posted on our website, hanford.gov. And there are identified routes that was performed by another vendor, but that we haven't identified, or there's a picture there, I can recall, where they haven't identified route. So we want to refer to that. The NEPA analysis, that's important because they kind of bounded their analysis based on the mileage that we can't go to New York and then come back. We kind of have to. Our NEPA analysis is bounded by the mileage that was analyzed. And don't recall it avoiding Colorado. And it's not a hard, if the NEPA analysis showed that at 1,800 miles, it's not a hard 801 is out of the question, but it's a reasonableness, like double that would be reasonable. So we're able to do things like avoid Oregon if we need to, because it's reasonable within the context of the analysis we did underneath.
Okay. And my other question, the sampling, all 6 tanks are sampled at the same time after the last tank is full. Is that correct?
All 6 containers.
Okay, excuse me, all 6 containers. And then it's 120 days for analysis.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's for analysis and final report.
Okay, thank you.
There should be no solids in that, correct?
Correct. Yeah, the stratification of the tank waste is opportune because solids have settled. We talked about we're only going to be installing the pretreatment capability within the 6 inches or so on the top of the upper layer. So we don't have any in our evaluation, any solids. Appreciable quantities. Probably not zero, but very close.
Other questions in the room or online? Yeah.
So on your second bullet in the conclusion, it says that, the test bed initiative is to provide information to better inform ongoing conversations. And I'm just curious, kind of the reasoning behind, since the holistic negotiations, the deadline for deciding grout treatment on-site, off-site, how it's gonna go for the 22 tanks is end of 2024. Your timeline that you gave us is test bed initiative wouldn't be done until best estimate spring of 2025. So how is it informing that decision on the 22 tanks?
So maybe not necessarily the 22 tanks, but we have a supplemental, an LAW supplemental treatment decision to make. So you're familiar with the settlement agreement. We're going to be performing alternative treatment through the grout means. We're going to be performing vitrification in the east area through AMPS, but then either of those are the full volume of low activity waste. So there's an existing milestone in the tri-party agreement for a supplemental treatment decision for LAW that this can also inform as well.
So this would be the S law?
Right.
Right, the FFRDC reference.
Yeah, we have not, and even in the settlement agreement, made an S law decision yet. But the settlement agreement says we will perform alternative treatment, so not supplemental treatment. It's a wording thing that I think we're going to have to communicate a little bit.
A law, S law.
Not committing to an acronym, but the S law decision hasn't been made even in the settlement agreement. And
it'll be a long way.
See you later, Bob.
And so things like this will help inform the supplemental treatment decision for law as well. with our regulators.
Other questions?
Sorry, I'll go.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna ask Bob over there how long it takes to get to waste control specialist.
It says, 15 hours and 40 minutes. Sorry, 23 hours and 17 minutes. Arrive 15:40 tomorrow, but I think that's driving through Oregon. I can't,
No, you're not allowed to do that.
yeah, I know. This route's, taking me through Oregon, so.
I've done that drive. It's not, it takes longer than that.
Yeah, now, isn't the thing not going through Oregon just a courtesy? It's not a law.
No,
No.
I was as surprised as anyone when I didn't find it.
I think it's a threat.
No.
Oh, come on.
Because when,
It's a threat.
after our last meeting, I went in, I looked up the DOT and the NRC requirements for transporting nuclear materials. And they consult with the DOE. They don't take advice from the DOE. And it's their rules and they will determine. And if I remember correctly, when I moved some spent fuel across the United States, we had to interface with a coordinator who had special certifications with the DOT to monitor the shipment. So yeah, I mean, we shipped spent fuel from Florida, Turkey Point, over to Nevada test site, and then up to Battelle Columbus lab, and then back to Turkey Point, back to Nevada test site for the demonstration program. So, you know, it can be done, but the DOT is really specific, their rules.
And there are several.
Yeah, and then they would hold back federal highway funds. You know, and you don't want to be in that.
I can't do that.
That's right.
What I will say is, so these 6 totes or containers, so they're double walled, it's a double wall container, and it is DOT compliant. And we would use the federal highway system to the maximum extent that we could. Yeah,
Every container's got a docket on it, and the docket has got the design of the container. The weight, yeah, exactly.
Your question there?
I think it's like related, but it's not for TBI.
Okay.
I can,
You can ask it anyway.
well, it's for EPA. I'm just curious, it's related to the treatability variance, but more to the holistic agreement. So if it's out of scope, don't feel like you have to answer, but just how that's going to work for the holistic agreement. And I'm guessing there will be comment periods on each treatability variance, or will it be one big one?
Well, we haven't made any decisions about future treatability variances. And we haven't received any applications for them. So I don't think we have any further specifics to say about potential future treatability variances.
Thank you.
Matt?
I just have a quick one. You might not know this because it is in the weeds about transportation. I see here that you've done your dose assessment for transportation. Any chance that you remember what the transportation index for one of the loads would be?
I don't remember. And so we used our NEPA analysis for a lot of that, distilling it down. So I'd have to refer to that. And if it's not there, I'd have to do some more digging, but transportation loaded.
Well, I know I'm relatively confident it's going to go out as a class A material.
Oh, okay.
It's the transportation index is yet another thing that defines, well, how much dose is the driver getting when he's transporting this?
I think you're right. I think, again, I have to go back. It shouldn't be anywhere near class C or grade.
No.
But I want to double check.
You'll get that back, information back.
Sure, I can do that.
To Lindsay?
Sure.
Okay.
Other questions? in the room, online.
Okay.
Thank you, Richard. And Janet.
Oh, sorry, we got one showing up, Dan Solitz.
Yes, thank you. Sorry for punching that so late. I had trouble selecting it. On the grout itself, are you going to be using just one kind of grout? Is there going to be several different kinds? And is there any details you can give us on the grout? And are you going to be doing testing on the grouted material?
Yeah, this goes back towards each vendor having a proprietary grout formulation. That's what, I mean, even today, that's what we've been told. Doesn't mean that we can't find that out, especially as the subcontract holder, but we will likely have to sign an NDA. And then I'm not sure how widely that can be posted. So we'll see what we can share, but that's probably going to be at least the answer right off the bat. And then in terms of testing, yep, we talked about the treatability variance, that being a requirement for post-treatment in the solidification prior to being disposed of on the land disposal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you again to our and everyone who provided perspective today. So we have some options going forward. We're well ahead of the agenda. We can take the break that we have, or we can power through for the last item.
I would love to power through people or
We just want to give the opportunity for the presenter to go about their day.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Okay, I'll get that one.
Thank you.
I'll get the.
What is our goal here?
So, what is our goal? Our goal is to pull up the next year's plan, draft work plan. And let's skim through it and take a look at some of these, what we have listed there and see if there's anything else we want to add to it. And, I'm gonna do it on my paper. I got it then on my presentation. There you go. So, the survey, my work. Just had it.
Can we get you a new one, EP?
No.
Okay.
You find it? Got it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Just folded it over.
Does everyone have one?
Okay, so our work plan, draft work plan, came out this week, essentially. A lot of it's, some holdovers from before, so we have some ability to add to this. If you turn to, page 8 of the draft plan. You take a look at, it takes a look at, what we feel that, what we're going to be interested in and what we want to see presentations in. And so we can click off a number of these that we've got done at the TBI. We probably, updates of that, maybe not necessarily a presentation, just simply when DOE gives us the update at the beginning of our meetings, they might mention progress on the TBI.
So we would, because I'm not a technical person, I'd like to have the person who, like our FPDs in the room to provide those updates to the committee. So if you take a look at what is on the list here, the first column in the box is informational briefings. And so whether that just be a dialogue or a PowerPoint presentation, I think it would be beneficial to have our SMEs as well as the regulators in the room for those conversations.
Okay, so then they might be quick and short because a lot of this, we've already introduced the information and we understand, and now we're progressing. For example, the TBI.
So yes, we've introduced the information, but I would anticipate that there's going to be updates to share along the way. So
That's what I'm talking about. Those updates.
yes, and so it's not going to be like a full educational session,
Right.
but it will include updates on the current progress and where we're at.
Right, and that's what I'm looking for. Okay, we have not had any discussion on the west area risk management issues, and so that would be certainly one that we can factor in for next year. And we've had our AMP system, and it's gonna be another year or so before we really need to be updated on that. Yeah, our lessons learned, into the HLW facility. Yesterday was mentioned that, DOE is, what is it? They're gonna have something to report on the lessons learned and the modifications to HLW.
Rob, I have that here. In one of the last weekly updates that Josh sent out, there was the EM monthly letter on what's happening at the different sites. And it mentioned that EM and Bechtel have put together a new plan for the construction of the WTP based upon, part upon lessons learned from the low activity waste construction. And this plan is designed to minimize accelerate schedule, minimize costs, and then use lessons learned. So I think if we had a briefing on that plan, since apparently it's new and it's going to result in different ways to complete the construction of that plan, that would be good to have a briefing on that.
I'll take that request back.
Would you like this to help you?
I have that,
Okay.
but thank you. I just have to find the right person. So I'm not saying no, I'm saying, let me hand it down.
Yeah, Matt.
Well, you can look
Well,
at
yes,
the picture, you can look at the picture of the lady who's pointing at a screen here, and maybe you'll recognize her.
Potentially. But yes, Matt Irwin is pretty good about coming in. He's planning on being here in August.
Okay.
Matt will be here as well as Suzanne, correct, Ryan?
Yeah. Okay, good.
But that's this fiscal year, so sorry to
Right.
deviate.
Right. Another issue that we had listed on here was, the use of grout for our LAW waste. That was kind of interesting what Pam had mentioned in her conversations, saying that, it might not even have to go into a nuclear, waste pile, and it can go in a commercial waste pile. And that's very interesting. I'd like to hear more.
WCS, which is
Yeah,
down, I don't know if there's something other than one of the andrews.
Well, and with that, that was the information that Pam had heard.
Right.
And said that, Brian Vance hadn't been briefed yet, so I think that putting something on a work plan that our site manager isn't briefed on, may be a little bit too early.
okay, so,
But I will write it down as something that is of interest to the tanks committee.
yeah,
Well, now the grouted law on-site treatment and disposal is a high-level topic, so if the new information came out, but probably fit under this existing item.
yeah,
That falls in there.
that's what I'm kind of going down the list.
Okay.
That's what brought that up.
Okay, I just didn't want to put a specific in there and be like,
No,
and get the, the big black mark on it.
and speaking of grout, I'll have to ask the committee here what you want to do about, an IM, or whether you want to, meet and discuss grout as a specific item. I put together a reading list of grout. It's on the table over there. All those, articles there, you can reach them through Otsi, or, just get them online. They're very, very readily available to you. If not, then give me a call and I can forward something. The other, thing is that, I also include, if you noticed on that list, I go through kind of chronologically my collection of grout studies over the years. And I also included, several of the Hanford Challenge, concerns and discussions in that reading list there. And so I would encourage everybody to take a look at that.
And with that, Rob, so one thing that you'll notice different from the previous work plan to this one is instead of advice, the agencies are asking for an action of the committee. So there are some stakeholders who are not in support of grout, and so we're looking more, maybe more like a roundtable
Okay,
discussion at a board meeting, maybe with a specific question for each stakeholder to answer.
Yeah.
Or maybe something like that.
Although it could be the advice if the board is able to reach consensus advice, we're just trying to, our
Right.
flexibility if the board can't reach advice.
right.
Still give everybody the opportunity to be heard.
Right, and I think that, the one part about the grouted is that the grout seems to be an answer for a number of organizations. EPA uses grout all the time to fix chemical wastes. We've been using in the nuclear industry, been using grout for everything from, dysfunctional contaminated equipment to, resins, from powder demineralizers, or from deep bed insulation. So it's a pretty common thing to put something in grout to fix it, to isolate it. And we need to better understand the big picture here and why, what additional risks would be present if we did grout our Hanford waste or any part of our Hanford waste. I note that nearly every report that I've seen has said, though, it would be S-law or some sort of a supplemental treatment law route. So, and we're not talking about, at this point, we're not talking about filling the tanks up with grout and walking away. We're really talking about off-site shipment of grouted waste. So, so I think, I don't know how a roundtable would work, but I'd certainly be interested in hearing if anybody's got any ideas. Pull people in and, I don't know, would we have presentations? Would we want to get P&L Amundsen down? I mean, they're the expert.
So I haven't planned that far out.
Okay.
So just kind of opening the floor for discussions. And so, yeah, there's opportunities to have different briefers come in and provide information. And then let the committee kind of decide what a product would look like. Would it be a sounding board? Would it be a white paper? Would it be a piece of advice? But that would be up to the committee and what they thought would be the best path forward for an action based on this request from the TPA.
Yeah, I'd really like to make sure we give them some advice or some action within this. I think that'd be a wonderful thing. I think though that, that there's still a lot of confusion and a lot of misunderstanding on grout and, you know, how effective it is.
And I know that the board likes to write advice, but there is a lot of value in the conversation and the dialogue.
So this would include representatives of all the regulators as well,
As far as a roundtable or,
roundtable, and
So-
just to hear their, to hear what their, requirements are for grout shipment.
so I think that may be more of like an informational update, based upon, like, we would have the department provide a briefing. The regulators are welcome to, provide a briefing or any type of regulator perspective. I don't know how appropriate it would be for a regulator to provide their response or even the department to provide what their thought process is on a specific sounding board question meant for our constituency,
Well,
Brian.
I wouldn't expect them to be part of the roundtable, but maybe a perspective and then they could leave and we could use their information.
Yes, I think it's important. Go ahead, Ryan.
No, I was gonna say, I get what you're saying. I think, hearing the idea of the roundtable, at least when I hear roundtable, I think of going around the room and talking about the issue. So if anything, it could be like Lindsay said, DOE, ecology, EPA, just share some kind of informational update or something, some kind of brief. And then the board has a roundtable and then we just have our folks in the room just to listen or answer clarifying questions.
Or they wouldn't even have to participate.
Yeah, but I mean, I'd be here, we might have some SMEs here just to at least.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we're using roundtable and sounding board those terms interchangeably? Is that, are you using them interchangeably, like, it means the same thing?
We should probably define which one is which.
Like, just so people know, like a sounding board, we haven't done it and I've never seen one, but I've heard about it, where there's a topic, for example, in the past, FFTF coming back online. It was a very contentious topic. There were a lot of opinions around the table, very different opinions that would never reach consensus. And so what they did is they, gave each person, I think, maybe 2 minutes to speak. And everything they said was recorded verbatim, written up into a document, so we'd go around the table, just the board members. And that document was then presented to the agencies as this is, you know, what each constituency thinks about FFTF or, you know, whatever you want to do it on.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know what kind of value that would have. I would hope some. I misuse the word roundtable because I heard it before. But, you know, just the discussion among the group about the subject matter of ground.
So are you more interested in the transportation? Or are you more interested in the grout formulation?
Actually, both. You know, I'm more active in the transportation area, but interested in the subject matter of grout because I'm not decided.
So the reason, I think we need to separate the two. And largely because DOT and DOE aren't on the same page.
Oh, I'm sure.
Okay, and they never have been. And so, and DOT and NRC control the roads. And so, you know, if we're doing this for DOE, we have to do something that they have an impact on, and that would be the grout and possibly the testing and what kind of tests are gonna be done, mechanical strengths, diffusivity,
I was gonna say, you know, with what Richard had to say, the grout formulation of our subcontractors will be proprietary and that information will not be able to be shared. Now, with that being said, as far as like the testing, it sounds like there is a requirement to EPA for us to provide that reporting back to them, which will then be publicly available. I don't think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to speak for EPA, but I don't know that EPA is looking for what specific type of testing that they're looking to be completed. Is EPA, can you step in and provide your perspective here?
what is it? Obviously a TCLP test, you know,
We're
and
going into the weeds though.
go ahead.
Well, I might suggest some more operations here, because we're talking about what we want on the agenda next year, correct? And DOE wants some action from us, and I agree with that. But we got a lot of long-standing questions, and we have a lot of different opinions on the ground. I think, Rob, you've done a yeoman's job putting together this list. I think we've got enough here to really start an immediate IM team. Get the IM team together with interested parties on this committee, talk about things, find out what these readings don't answer. That way we can then go back out to DOE or associated PNL, associated subject matter experts that we can then bring in for this roundtable or this action that we're going to have next year. I really think that we should attack this on an issue, on an issues team, because I've never been a part of one, so I don't know. And I would appreciate any correction on this IM team, and then go back out to DOE. This is who we want to see. These are the questions that story meaning, even after reading this material or bringing our own new material to the IM team. And that way we can hit a roundtable. That way we get the people we want, when we want them. DOE also gets the action from us that I hope that you want. I can't speak for you, of course.
Well, that's an idea, to have a separate IM call.
Yeah,
in a month or so and start to take some notes.
Yeah, I think that we should really get out there and get volunteers for this group, because it's important, it's topical, it's very pertinent right now with ballistics and TBI, all this going on, it's very topical.
Yeah.
I put together 3/4 of a white paper on the chemistry of grout. It's designed to give people a basic understanding of what grout is, why it acts as it does, what some of the tests are you do of grout. And I think any discussion on grout, you need to start a little bit with understanding on a simple basis of how the chemistry works. This would be chemistry for non-chemist majors. Also, as the lead process engineer at Fernald, when we grouted up all the K65 waste, the residue from the Syncrobol blue wine, and we sent 3,776 canisters, 6 feet wide and 6 feet tall, full of grout to McAndrews, Texas. And I designed, or when we were in operations, I had the charge of all the recipes, and they varied quite a bit. And so I have some basic information I can present. Not that it's relevant to Hanford, but just give people another understanding of some of the things you need to be aware of when you're grouting waste. And I have all that. And that would be something I could put in a series of handouts, maybe 4, 5, 6 pages, something like that, and serve that as a basis for any talking, answering questions, and where we want to go from there. Perhaps to this reading list or other things on other lists on the DOE site. But I think a basic understanding of the chemistry of grout, how it works, what it does, is necessary for this group. It would be information only. It wouldn't be designed to say, I believe we ought to do this with SLAW, or I believe we ought to do that with SLAW, but a basic understanding of grout chemistry. And I can put that, I have that right now, I can put together in a few simple handouts.
So that's something for an IM team?
It could be for an IM team, it could be for a larger group. I just need to know how many people are there.
So as far as like briefing the committee, we need to stick with having our SMEs briefing the committee and or our contractors. However, if there is an IM team that wants to form and start those conversations, you know, I am always around to support that,
I thought
those
an
efforts.
IM team on grout.
There is, and the majority of the room is part of it.
Perfect. So we can schedule an IM team call and have that kind of conversation. And then I can take the action to reach out to Mr. Valle over here, who's not here anymore, and see if there is someone in specific, maybe, I want to say Al Kruger, he likes to get into the weedy weeds. You're like, bring out that.
Yeah, he's more glass though.
Yeah, and then kind of go from there. I think it's a pretty fair request of the committee, and I don't see why we couldn't support that. Now, with that being said, I just have to find the right person.
Well,
Does that work? Do you guys want to schedule your IM team call, and then I can take the action to see what I can find as far as chemistry of prep briefing?
Well, I could do that.
I know, but I think it's we need to have the department
Okay.
and or our contractors provide our
But
technical
for an
briefing.
IM team call,
You're on an IM team call.
I could put it together and give you the,
That's correct.
You're doing your IM teamwork. I will be there to support.
I have no idea how to get these things so everybody can see it on call.
We have a facilitator here that will,
That's what I was gonna say, Josh.
yes, Mr. Josh, who will be there to help you with all of your needs.
And I don't know if you'll need extra help or anything like that, but I'm very interested in being very active.
Yeah, okay, good.
So those in the room,
Here's my sanity check.
Oh,
those in the room, we have Rob leading it, Susan, Mia, and Matt as part of it. Sorry, they haven't actually met since you joined it. I'm guessing, and then Bob has us to join. Chris, I'm guessing you would like to join?
Yeah,
and I think Concha.
but I think I'm already on it.
Contract, yeah.
Yeah. He sent me a paper, but I couldn't use it.
I don't have you listed, so I will add you.
Okay.
And Larry, would you like to be part of this team? Okay,
How much for now?
Just put your email in there.
Now for a phone call.
then the question.
Potentially. Yeah.
And then we
Well-
just look at the progress.
Yeah, I think it would be
Sure.
beneficial to work with the facilitation team to then figure out a time that works for the group.
Okay.
I know that the hub doesn't work in July. With that being said, I know the hub still is going, like the issue manager teams will be doing some work in July. I should be around most of July to support. I know there'll be various amounts of vacations. I know I have a few scheduled, so
Yeah.
like I'll be out the last week of July as well as a couple other days at the end of this month.
So can we just tentatively look at third week of July and see if we can fit a date in there?
I'd have to go back and look at my calendar.
Okay.
I don't know off the top of my head. But let's,
What I was gonna propose is that we, get Lindsay to take a look at her calendar. She's critical to the meeting. And, you take a look at your vacation schedule on that. And then, we'll pass that around to people email wise and try to get something maybe in the third week of July.
yeah, I know. I don't see why we couldn't do that. Now, with that being said, try to send all your documents to Josh and have the facilitation team distribute those documents on your behalf. That will be helpful to ensure that all of the parties are included on the committee.
Yeah, anything? You look very interested.
All right. Is there anything else, I guess, for the group that you think is missing for FY 25?
Yeah, I have two things.
Okay.
Maybe this is FY 26, maybe late 25. I'll put it out and people can respond. Once we start operations, and I think operations will have to begin before the operational readiness review and before hot commissioning and cold commissioning. Some of these will have to be in place. But I'm pretty sure that you're gonna have very different management systems in operation. They're gonna have to be conducted under what's called conduct of operations. That's DOE order 422.1. It imposes a very strict formality and structure of operations. It's quite different than management styles for project management or construction management. It's designed solely for operations. And I want to read something here in the introduction to this order. The object of this order is to define the requirements for establishing and implementing conduct of operations at Department of Energy, including National Security Administration facilities and projects. Conduct of operations consists of formal documentation, practices, and actions implementing disciplined and structured operation that support mission success and promote worker, public, and environmental protection. It supports integrated safety management. You know, integrated safety management is a key overriding factor for all safety practices at Hanford DOE sites. It supports integrated management system by providing concrete techniques and practices to implement ISM core functions of development, implement hazard controls, and perform work within controls. The term operations encompasses work activities of any facility or organization from building infrastructure to print shops, computer centers, to scientific research, to nuclear facilities. DOE line management can indicate to the prime contractor that conduct of ops is operable for any facility, whether it's a nuclear facility or a HAZCAP. At CHPRC, DOE told us that we had to implement conduct of ops at all our pump and treats, for our environmental sampling, even with contracting with laboratories offsite, for our data management, for our documents that we produce, circular record documents, all those have to be conducted under conduct of operations. I think this is what's going to govern how the WTP DF law operates. It's already governing how pump and treat operates the next 40, 50 years. And I think somewhere along the line, a presentation of how they're going to implement conduct of ops would be very informative for this group, because that's what's going to govern the management and safety, quality assurance to site for 40, 50 years in DF law. And they may not be operating that way right now, but it requires different management, different personnel, different management structure.
So what if we are going to have that discussion? So at WTP, they have the construction guys, and then they have operation guys. OPSEC is already there now. Operations, ISMS is already in functioning now, so we could have that discussion from the operations manager at the WTP, because they're already practicing it. So,
PUE order 422 is common throughout all Hanford facilities. It's not just operation, it's throughout everything. It's a very common thing, so I'm not sure what we would learn from that.
This was a subject that's better for the whole.
You know,
So Bob, you have more technical knowledge than a lot of folks,
Okay,
right?
okay.
So with that being said, when we bring briefings to the board, they are meant to be brought forward at a level the general public can understand. Now,
okay.
just sitting through the last two briefings, I can let you know that we went a little bit of way further down than what the general public, I guess, the intent of the briefings were. So with that being said, I think that what Chris's recommendation is for that conduct of operations and how to implement it, maybe a more informational briefing to,
It's information, it's not for advice.
right? And what maybe it's for some of our new members, maybe it's a refresher for some of our seasoned members. It's,
yeah, and it fits hand in hand with the quality assurance program and the other reviews that they have, and procedural control, all that kind of stuff. So,
And for all the safety concerns and talks that have been on the HAB for at least 4 years that I've been on it, I've never heard ISMS brought up. The ISMS is a management system under which the entire site has to operate. I've never heard ISMS, its core functions and, the wheels that it has.
there's a big sign on the side of the highway. As you go up to the Hanford side, ISMS. Yeah, it's been here for years and years and
But
years.
not at the HAB.
Oh, they have, but we don't understand it yet. That's right.
so what else do you have for us?
Related, we've seen that diagram a number of times where they show all the subsystems for DF law. And there's 25 subsystems. And my concern is, or my interest is, how are they gonna manage process control, 25 subsystems, so that day in and day out, if nothing fails, they get 30 metric tons of glass per day, 40 years. At the Fernald site, we had a number of process control plans that we wrote that wound up indicating what kinds of operator aids we had, what kinds of standing orders we had to have. And so how we operated, what happens if something didn't work, what were the key things that could prevent a roadblock from stopping us from meeting our certain number of casts. All that was spelled out how we had to meet them. So I'm wondering how they're gonna manage with 25 subsystems, any one of which goes down can stop the whole process. Consistency over 40 years, day in and day out, 24/7. That would be a process control. How are they gonna control all those processes?
We have a lot of DF law questions.
Yeah, starting from DF law and somewhere we go to the high, vitrification of high activity waste. Certainly for DF law, right off the bat.
Do you have that?
This might fit on retrievals, and I heard Rob speak about it yesterday, but the cross-site transfer lines, maybe as a joint thing with lids.
I heard that request yesterday.
Yeah.
And just so you guys are aware, we're sending all of these requests back to our SMEs and we're asking the questions. So if there is something that we're able to support, we're happy to put it on the work plan, but there may be things that we are unable to support.
Lindsay, you've really been good at that.
It's Laura and Mary Ann too.
Well, you guys deserve medals.
We're trying.
So, okay, now I have my list.
Wait, hold on, I think Mia has something.
Oh, sorry, Mia, please.
So I'm sure this fits under grouted law, offsite treatment and disposal, but just want to make sure, that when the decisions are made, per the settlement agreement, the, end of the year, that we're finding out about those, getting briefed about those,
Okay.
on the 22 tanks and 200 West and all that. And then my other thing is, NewCon. So Ryan shared that the public meeting would run August 26th till October tenth.
It's a long meeting.
Or, thank you, comment period, that is a long meeting. So maybe like end of, next year would be, like, end of fiscal year next year would be a good time to get briefed on UConn.
Sorry, yes, I think we're looking at the, actually, Dana, are you still on the call? Do you know, do you have a rough, do we have a rough idea of when Yukon comment period is gonna happen right now?
Yes, I am on the call. And here, let me click really quick. But I think what you said was right, August 26th through October 10th. And at this time, I haven't heard anything. It looks like it's on schedule.
Okay, so Mia, sorry, you're saying interested in, at the end of this fiscal year or next year?
Well, just to find out if it's working. So I know the comment period is about the technology and
Yeah.
pink papers and all of that. To at some point find out, you know, once it's used.
Sounds like a follow-up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and I think that that would probably be something that might be, like a brief with DOE and ecology, since DOE is gonna do the actual, you know, demonstration or test, and we're just doing the permit for it, so that might be a brief thing, but I think that makes sense to do.
Sorry, weren't we supposed to have a briefing with Liz on that topic?
Well, I think we were looking at it, but it's been delayed a few times, and I think I was gonna look at in advance, so that's something, if we're looking at a comment period of August to October, maybe that could potentially be a potential either status update or something at the August committee meetings if there's time for
Yeah,
it.
we can take a look at that.
Yeah, so I think Lindsay and I can take a look, because I envision it be something very similar that we have to do where ecology could talk about the RD&D permit side of it, and then DOE could talk about the actual demonstration part. So that's probably gonna be have to two-pronged attack for that, because DOE's gonna do the actual, you know, demonstration.
Yeah, because we've been talking about
Yeah.
that one since you mentioned it at the OHCB board meeting.
Yeah, I've been still been tracking that one, so I think Lindsay and I should follow up on that one potentially, if there's an
Yeah.
interest in August for that.
We'll take the action on that one.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay.
Okay, so the tank presentations for integrity that we get.
Yeah.
So there's a couple things that were missed at the last one, even
Okay.
though it was good. It was great. It was.
Room for improvement.
Okay, yeah. So, and this was on my list from last year.
Okay.
So basically, I think we need to better understand, the tank integrity from the standpoint of remaining life. You know, we're expecting 50 more years out of some of these tanks. They're going certainly beyond their design limit and design beyond our experience level. And so that would be, one is the remaining life. And the second would be, is to better understand the determination of the estimated life of the dome of the tanks with the rebar exposed. The other the other is they keep mentioning this expert panel, tank integrity expert panel. And they're getting information on what to do in chemistries and things from this expert panel. Can we get a discussion on that expert panel, who they are? Maybe, you know, what their mission statement is, how they're giving direction to the site? Or things like that?
I can make that request back. I don't know what availability they would have to support.
So Rob, on that, the HAB historically has had people like Todd Martin. Well, Todd Martin was actually a
Yeah,
facilitator
you
for
was
that.
listening.
But people with knowledge have been allowed to listen in. You don't get to ask questions. But I think it's worthwhile to ask if we could have somebody from the tank committee listen in. Be very informative.
Yeah, I have attended many of them, okay. I kind of know what it's about, but I don't think other people do. And when the presenter comes out and says, well, the expert panel says we gotta do this. Well, that just struck my thing, is like a lot of people didn't know here what the expert panel is, who it represents, why are they there, and et cetera, et cetera. And I know that the expert panel has actually changed people. You know, I think Jerry Frankel is no longer associated with Ohio State. And so he's gone. And I know that Ron Ballinger's gone because he was with MIT. And so, so anyway, the point it would be is I'm also trying to give committees the ability to trust the DOE in making some good decisions and getting good advice. And I just think that if we had a short discussion on the tank integrity panel, the expert panel, and like I said, who they are, what they do, what they represent, who are the ground experts, who are the cement experts, who are the corrosion experts, you know, et cetera. So that was on our list from way back when. So I just,
So if we leave tank integrity vague, which would be my recommendation, I think we can frame briefings underneath tank integrity. So as far as addressing remaining life and estimated life of the domes with the rebar exposed, I think that would be an opportunity to frame that underneath that. As far as the expert panel goes, I'll take that one back and I'll ask the question. I don't know that we'd be able to have folks attend from that expert panel. However, maybe maybe we could get, even if we got one to come, if they had the availability to support that request.
Just talking to Karthik. Yeah, I was gonna say Karthik would be perfect.
Oh, he's great when he comes, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let me add one thing to ask. So at Oak Ridge, they repaired tanks. Their tanks have been empty for a long time. But they developed the ability to repair them and to keep using them. And I don't think we do that at Hanford. But it would be interesting to ask someone the possibility of extending the life to repair based on, you know, the experience of Oak Ridge and other places would be interesting.
Okay. And I think one of the challenges, like to be transparent with you guys that I come across is that a lot of all of our SMEs have full-time jobs, right? They have their jobs are their jobs. And then this is an additional task that is being asked of them in addition to what they're doing. And so if there is a specific item that the group is looking to bring advice forward on, and that we could frame those briefings and I guess capitalize on the time that they are investing into bringing these briefings to the board, I think knowing that ahead of time is beneficial for me. Just something to be aware of and to think about.
And yeah. I mean, it's like I read in the same document, not only repairing the tanks here at Hanford, to people looking at it, but also dry removal of the waste. So in other words, you know, get little tractors in there and dig it up and scoop it out as dry, as opposed to sluicing it and then sucking it out. So, you know, there's all those kind of things.
Anything else on your list?
No, I don't think so. Just the remaining life, you know, how are they factoring remaining life?
I have a tour request.
Okay.
The cold test facility. And going inside have you been to that, Rob?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's interesting. It's really cool.
You've been there?
I've been there like 3 times.
Oh. So it's like a huge.
Yeah, so the cold test facility is essentially this huge empty tank they've got. It's not even out of Hanford. It's offsite.
It's a hammer.
Hammer.
Oh,
Yeah,
not
it's a big
temperature.
empty tank. You can walk in and they got like the railways, you can walk on top and they do like the testing and stuff.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We've been there several times.
That's where we learned about the Mars.
Request for the full test
Rover.
facility.
Rover. Yeah, the Mars arm.
Yeah, they do a lot of testing.
Yeah,
I mean-
exactly.
Right, that's what it was built for. It's a
Cold, radioactively cold.
I know. I'm trying to figure out the best.
And it's, I'm like, what am I
I'm just like,
I was there a few weeks ago.
but I do actually have an idea for.
So Rob and now Chris will be taking all this information and shepherding the committee's, desires to the work out.
Right.
Um,
Now, does anybody have any desire to go through the holistic agreement and offer some kind of message?
So, when we had the discussion on that, I think is the whole, after the presenters left the room, we talked about some of the issues, and I didn't bring the paperwork, but there were 4 places that we had issues, and so, I think that if there's room or time, that might be something to discuss. I don't think they were terribly negative, but there were some issues in the room, the whole.
Yeah.
And I don't really want any upon it.
Yeah. Well, I honestly, when I went through that document, you know, it was really hard. It was,
Oh my God.
and a lot of it, I had to go back to the milestone of, what is it, Appendix C of the tri-party agreement to go look at the milestones, to go back and see what they're changing. And I asked somebody, I said, why did it take 5 years? Well, now I understand. 100 meetings in 5 years. And, yeah. Very impressive work, but I still, very illegal.
So, when
Yes,
you
it
asked
has to be.
when you asked about going over the holistics, were you proposing an IM team or something else?
Well, that was on the list of potential things. Do we want to offer any advice on the holistic negotiation? Do we want to be a cheerleader and say, you know, good work, we like it. We like you exploring these avenues. Proceed, I mean, something simple. What do you people feel there?
I'm sorry, my initial thoughts is that the comment window is currently 60 days.
Yeah, currently the comment period is scheduled to go through August 2nd. That being said, like we shared at the COV meeting this morning, we've gotten several extension requests that the agencies are going to be discussing. But as of now, the comment period is scheduled till August.
I would say that that's a very tight timeline to do within an IM team. And for myself personally, I'm also writing Oregon's response to the holistics. So I'd have to be, you know, take a very neutral stance and only point out certain where things are and things of that nature. But I would be willing to assist in that, but I don't know how much extra I could add.
Okay. What do you think, Chair? No, but
Pam? Ann just twisted my arm to read the whole thing, and I said, I don't think so, I've read the summary. He felt some more bullets could be bitten that weren't. So I don't know. I mean, those of you that understand this, I appreciate so much all that you do. And if there's general policy that we could drop some advice on, I think that would be useful, but the whole process in the document itself is pretty huge, apparently.
yeah,
You know, it's a good document, and it's an important document. It's gonna live for decades. And it really would behoove us to at least discuss this among the whole. I don't know that we can do anything after the comment period is over, but we should have started this last month, right?
And Ryan, you had information to share as far as receiving the input after a comment period is complete at the previous meeting.
You remember what Dana shared? Like, if the board passes it, I would have to actually try and remember exactly what Dana shared, but the board can pass advice after the sorry, I'm just noodling over that now, because if the board passes advice after the comment period's over, the agencies can still respond to it as advice, but I don't think it would be submitted as a comment for the comment period. If that makes sense.
But it still would be considered, correct?
I think it depends on timing. So if the advice is submitted before proposed changes, or, you know, if we're still working on the response to comments and considering public input, and before proposed changes are implemented or the consent decree changes filed to the court, I think it all just depends on timing.
what we did when the life cycle report came out is the board didn't submit any advice, although there were a lot of comments. And what we did is we collected individual comments from individual board members and wrote those in the letter, but submitted them as a member of the public. Not anything official is coming from the board. And that might be something we could do with the holistic negotiation thing too.
Yeah, and the other thing to consider, I know looking at timing, is if you look at the holistic agreement, there's obviously a whole slew of proposed changes to the TPA and then the consent decree, and there's gonna be a lot of steps along the way for the agreement. So you could also look at, maybe instead of looking at holistically, you could look at, pieces or something of it too. So I'm just trying to think of different options. But I think there's a couple different avenues you guys could take if there's some interest on it. It all depends on what the board wants to do, I think. But Lindsay and I have shared that, depending what the board identifies, we'll work the best we can to be flexible with timing of, like schedule IM teams and that kind of stuff, and just be as flexible as we can during the process with you guys.
I think the detail necessary, specific comments, not general comments. The detail is mind consuming, how much effort you're gonna have to put in to have a comment. I feel almost inadequate to do too much of more of a review than skim it like I did and go through it. Okay, let me change the subject then. Keep that as an item. I don't know, maybe people want to act on it, tell me. But System Plan 10 is another one issue that came out here not too long ago. And System Plan 10 offers some options. And I don't know if folks want to say what our preferred option is, but it probably would be more meaningful to look at the system plan and spend some time on that.
Isn't that so much, my advanced with the holistic?
Well,
To determine the path forward for System Plan 10 at the last meeting. I don't remember off the top of my head. I have to go back and look at the memory, but
In the meeting we held at CBC, Rob proposed setting up an IM team to be discussed at some point in time in the future. During a recent ESC call, we decided that we would discuss this when in my System Plan 10 IM team at this meeting, and that's where we are now, as I remember it.
I thought there was a path forward at a previous Tanks meeting.
If I recall, we had talked about it as a potential IM team because it's one of those things, especially with the new holistics, since you want to get your input on the new system plan in, a couple of years before the new system plan comes out, that it might be something we look towards. And I'd be very interested in that. As an aside, I am very interested in how the old system plan informed the holistics, because some of those dates chosen are like, well, how the heck are they going to do that? But that's neither here nor there. I do think I am interested in the system plan too. Simply because we can give advice on system plan 11.
There's another thing to consider with System Plan 2. In February, the next version, February 2025, the next version of the life cycle cost schedule and scope report is due out every 3 years. Last one was 2022 in February. So February 2025 should be the next one. And see if you could ask Brian Esparza, Andrew Esparza, one of the Esparza. Brian Esparza, if he's still on track to have that issued in February 2025. But that will build upon System Plan 10 for all the scope, cost, and schedule having to do with DF law, WTP, and so on and so forth. But that might be something we plan on commenting on too, especially as compared to everything else that we've heard.
Well, one of the troubling things is that whether it's the AOA, the FFRDC, the system plan, they present so many options that it's kind of silly. Because you spend a lot of time on an option and it just disappear out of the next report. Yeah, I just find, I really struggle with the fact that they just won't pick one of these options and say this is preferred. And they won't tell me that the baseline is what's preferred, because I already know they're gonna do away with WTP pre-treat facility. So, you know, that's already a done deal at this point. But again, you know, there's a lot there. And I do think System Plan 10 is important. I'd love to pick an option and say, okay, let's concentrate on this and let's get to it. But, you know, System Plan Option 2 is the phased approach. And I certainly believe that's probably the one that's the tendency there. I can't understand. I do understand a little bit of why Ecology asked them to build new tanks in the option, 5 or 4. But again, I said before in other meetings is we have several million gallons of tank space in the pre-treat facility already installed that I see no effort to cannibalize or use them or use that facility for anything. Remember, that's a complete black cell facility. Part of the costs are so high is because it is a black cell. And that means, you know, no man will ever enter or no person will ever enter certain areas. And so things were built for that 40 or 50-year life with that anticipated. No moving parts, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know what to say about those things. I don't know if we can say that in the system plan. Why didn't we explore the use of the facility, the pretreatment facility for some of these functions? I don't have a good feeling here on that, but
I've refreshed my memory to fill in that last, the middle step of the science team. It was discussed at the last time's meeting. When they confirmed the desire for it. And the idea was that it's giving time to committee to look back at System Plan 10, identify gaps or special interests, and then bring that forward to a potential future IMT meeting.
okay,
So we need to schedule the IMT meeting is what I'm hearing.
yeah,
Did we formulate that IM team? Do we have persons?
we have some people.
And volunteers?
So, yeah.
And then Josh, you have the action then to send out a doodle poll to schedule a System Plan 10 meeting?
Do so. Our current membership consists of Rob Davis, Matt Hendrickson, Lee Berg, and Sidney Coleman.
System Plan 10.
Yes.
Oh, jeez, my job being a member of this. Damn with faint praise.
60 hours a week, right?
You're done? Ready for the day to be over?
Yeah.
Okay.
Rob, real quick, I just wanted to know, is you know, System Plan 10 is already issued, it's done, it's final. So if the board were to ever want to consider kind of system plan advice or any kind of feedback, I think you probably want to look ahead to the next iteration.
Right, kind of like what we did last time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe we can take a look at what our SMEs can support the IM team in their formulation.
Right.
Rob,
To ensure.
on the fiscal year 25, did you discuss retrievals? And I guess, is that discussed?
It's on the work plan retrieval.
Yeah. Can I ask if, what's the center target of that and what's the general?
That's information that we'd be provided with information from the.
Oh, it's just, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So we could do that all with one entity, with one expert coming in?
Retrievals?
Yeah.
We'd probably have like a little team of them, but yeah.
Okay.
So Rob, is the National Academies done? Or have they got a firewood under them again to relook at?
I did not, I thought they were done. The third volume report
They
was out.
actually made a recommendation, and it was grabbed.
Now, National Academy their job was to, there's so many of these documents floating around. I think the National Academy final report, all the recommendations had to do with the MFR, whatever that
RBC.
consortium was.
Right.
They recommended yes or no on what the NFR, that other committee, Consortium of Research Labs did.
Right.
They didn't make recommendations for say about yes or no. Their scope was to comment on what the grouping of national labs put out.
Right.
And they made recommendations concerning the conclusions of the national labs.
But again, the S law report was specific for LAW treated waste for grout. Yes.
So I was told Congress sent them off to do the study the first time. They came back with no recommendations. They studied. Second time, they went out, they came back with no recommendation. The third time, Congress said, come back with a recommendation. And they embraced grout more than they had in the past. I don't know how definitive it was, but after 3 tries, my starts being Kevin Smith.
Yeah, the first report was more of a scoping study, what they're gonna look at. The second report was kind of more like an interim report. But they divided up into all their subcommittees at that point, and they had a leader for each one that was gonna write the section. Bates is the leader of the group from SRNO. And then the fourth one is really,
Fourth one was the final one.
yeah,
And I think one of the major conclusions is there wasn't enough information in the National Laboratory final report to definitely say grout or not. It was good informational, but you needed to do a little bit more in this regard. And their recommendation was you needed further study before you could conclude grout or not grout.
And some more.
Yeah, more money.
in time.
All right, we have a pretty robust list to talk further about tomorrow. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I just appreciate everybody here at the meeting. Really like it.
All right. Yep. Thanks, everyone. This meeting's adjourned.
Thank you. Chris.
Outside the meeting.